friends, I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North, and today I'm going to be touring you around our current property and all of the gardening spaces that we have here. So behind me we have the food forest. In the back corner we have our low raised beds. Across the way we have our waist high beds, and then we have our in-ground garden as well. So we're gonna get started. I'm not sure if it's gonna pour on me today or not. If it does, I'll finish the tour tomorrow so that you have a full tour of this property. Let's get going. So let's start the tour in the food forest at the beginning where I planted the very first apple tree. So this apple tree I believe is called a golden apple. I will have to check my notes. The tag has been ripped off, so I'm not sure exactly, but I do believe it's the golden apple tree. What I want to show you is all of the new raspberry plants that are starting to come up here in the food forest, and I am not upset about it in the least. I love that it is just kind of taking over and building this gorgeous area of food. So to date, we have now picked 5 large Ziploc bags of red raspberries from the property, and there are still so many more to show you. So these ones here are, you can see one, these ones here are the gold raspberries, and they're pretty sweet as well. The only thing I would say about them is it's a little bit harder to figure out if they're ready, but if you just go to pull them off and they don't come off right away, then you know that they're not. So also you'll notice that I have planted some Egyptian walking onions in here. Last year I brought a whole bunch of those little tiny onions that grow at the tops of them, and I just started planting them everywhere because there were always people who are looking for Egyptian walking onions, and I wanted to be able to share them as well as have enough for the new property. So what I want to show you over here, and I think if I just stand here you can see it. This right here is a new lily that I planted last year. The flowers haven't opened yet, but I am so excited for when that happens. That plant is about 4 feet tall and it is a perennial. It will always come back. So right at the beginning, next to the first apple tree that we've planted, we have this beautiful lily, and hence our female dog's name is Lily, so that's one of the reasons why I also planted that here. Now, if I just turn a little bit here, you can get a really good idea of the raspberries that are really starting to take over. Now, behind the raspberries and the lilies, I'm not sure if you can tell what plant that is, but that is a sea buckthorn. So I have 3 of them that we planted originally. There are 2 females and 1 male. So we put the male plant in between them. And so I'm just going to come over here a little bit just to show you. So the one right behind Jax is the male plant. But the interesting thing about these plants is, and if I just back up over here, beside where Jax was standing, they are growing all up here in the food forest as well. So they have self-seeded and are growing and filling in my food forest. The other thing I want to show you in the middle of the sea buckthorn new baby plants is my pawpaw tree. So it is doing really good. It seems to really like this area. I'm not sure if you remember that I planted these. These were bare root trees, no leaves, and it looked like a twig with some roots on it. And they are just doing amazing. I know I had a couple different viewers say that they thought those trees were a little too old. I did get them from a very reputable supplier in Niagara Falls here in Ontario, and look at them. They're doing amazing. And so I'm just gonna span over here. I have more Egyptian walking onions. And so they do look a little messy, but that's how they get their name. They get really top heavy with those little bulbs that are growing, and they fall over and they attach into the soil, and then they start growing additional walking onions, hence the name Egyptian walking onions. Here I have another lily. Now I wish I had brought out my notes with me so that I could tell you exactly what type of lilies these are. I did order 2 different kinds, so this one is not going to be the same color as the other one, I believe. I had a handful of them, and I just tried to plant them throughout the food forest to add that really pretty color to it. And so I'm just gonna span over here a little bit into the red raspberries. Some of you may remember, those of you that have been following along for quite some time now, I actually dug these up from an area over where I plant my tomatoes, and I planted them here. They didn't look good that year, but you can see all of this newly this new green growth that's growing here. They are taking over, and again, look at all the red berries that I haven't picked yet. But one thing I do want to back up and take a look at is in the middle of these raspberry plants is my pawpaw tree, and it is doing just as good as the other one, which I'm really surprised by, because the first year we had Lily, she actually chewed on this one, and it is doing amazing. So the new owners are going to love having these trees here. All right, guys, this tree here is a little embarrassing, but also pretty cool at the same time. So this is a weeping mulberry, and it is not supposed to have all this growth that grows straight up like that. It's supposed to be very umbrella-like. It comes over, it produces fruit that is very similar looking to a blackberry, so they're long, a little bit smaller. So I'll just take you over to see if there are any on here. I do have another one I can look at. So this is kind of what they look like. But I really should have been pruning this tree. And I came out here, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, and I said to my husband, oh my Lord, look at this tree. We really should have been pruning it. But then I kind of looked at it again and thought to myself, it's beautiful. Like, it's so unique looking, and I decided to leave it. Now, if I just turn around to show you the exact same tree, this is what it should be looking like. It should really be draping and really like an upside down or like a regular umbrella. And so this one here has not been pruned as well. So it's really interesting to see that this one is doing what it needs to do. Having said that, it does need to be trimmed. It is too long and it's starting to lay on the ground. So it really does need to be tidied up a bit. Here we have some Comfrey, and it is Bocking 14 Comfrey. And what that means is that you can only propagate it by digging up part of the root and planting that root. So you'll see that some of the flowers on it have already bloomed and have now gone and dried out, and I'm not worried in the least that these are going to drop seed because this plant does not produce seed. It is not an invasive form of or variety of comfrey. Beside it, you'll see that I have a whole bunch of mint. So this is going to be awesome. We dried a ton of it last year to make teas out of. And right beside the mint, we have another pawpaw tree. And interestingly, this one is not doing as well. Now you'll see that it has beautiful leaves on it, but the fact that it has a quarter of the leaves that the other two have, I know that they are more happy up in the middle of the food forest where it gets a lot more sun. So this tree here really should be moved to a place where it has more sun. The idea when you first plant these trees is to plant them where they have a lot of shade, and then once they grow a little bit more, you want to provide them more sun. And so I'm just gonna spin over here. The girls want to see you. Hi, girls. Hi, girls. And so down in the girls' garden, we have some round zucchinis growing for them. They're not quite big enough yet. I want to grow them a little bit bigger. And then once they're the size, I'll just cut them open and put them in there for them, and they'll have a special treat. So this area here is behind the pool fence, and again, I almost feel like I should be, oh my Lord, like look at the berries that are still on these plants. This is going to have to be a family affair tonight after dinner. If it's not raining, we are going to have to come out here and really start picking, because I just can't waste the food that has been grown here. This is crazy. This area here is the low raised bed garden, and all of this back here is the rhubarb, which is doing really well. And in front of it here is another pile of comfrey. And if I didn't mention it last time, chickens love comfrey. And so I will come by here probably tomorrow and chop half of this off and just throw it into the chicken pen, and they will devour it. So here we have the low raised bed garden, like I said, and it is sparse this year. I really tried my best to fill it up and have lush plants here. This whole bed right here, I must have done 8 rows of calendula. They did not take. What did take are ground cherries, and I didn't plant them this year. These are just plants that have volunteered. They decided that they had to be here, and they are growing. So I'm going to leave them. For those of you that have never had a ground cherry before, the way I usually do it is once they fall off the plant, you open up that little lantern and there is a wonderful fruit inside. You will love it. We have picked in the past hundreds and hundreds of them. I've removed them from the lanterns. I've frozen them, and then my husband uses them in his smoothies. Now behind this bed, you'll see that there are some plants that resemble some kind of squash plant. For whatever reason, they are not doing very well. You can see that they're quite yellow, which means that they're missing something. So whether that be something in the soil or they're just not getting enough water, I'm not sure what it is. We have had an abundance of cucumber beetles, and they have attacked these plants as well. So over to the next bed again, I tried to fill this bed with calendula. And I did that because I had, 10 different colors of calendula. And the new owners are going to be having their wedding here in September. And I thought that it would look beautiful to have these boxes filled with flowers. It hasn't worked out. For whatever reason, these ground cherry plants have really just taken over, and the new owners are going to be ground cherry rich. And so I'm just going to back up here, and you'll see that in this bed here, again, ground cherries, you'll see that there is some calendula that took, as well as my dad had given me some vining tomato plants. And so I've put them onto this trellis. They aren't really growing at the speed that I thought they would, but they are producing. So as soon as I start to see them turning a little bit more of that orange color, I'll grab them up before the bugs get at them. So across the property, we have the 4 raised beds, waist-high raised beds that we built out of recycled barn material, and they are doing amazing. And I haven't given these beds any more attention than those short raised beds, but whatever it is, these plants just are thriving in these beds. So let's take a look to see what I've planted in them. We're going to start here at the end. Now you'll see here we do have some that are going to seed. So this here is bok choy, and I've just let it go. I'll probably pull some of this stuff out and start feeding it to the chickens. They will love it. And so I do have some more down there. You'll see that I have these beautiful onion flowers that are here. And so these are onions that got missed last year, and I didn't see them this year when I was planting out the garden, and they are just looking beautiful. So tall with this gorgeous flower ball that is going to provide a ton of seeds. So if you haven't saved onion seeds before, you can save them from year 2 onions, which these are. And so here we have spaghetti squash. And so you can see that there is a nice big spaghetti squash here. Unfortunately, the plants that are beside it, buttercup, they are not doing well, which is really weird considering that they're in the same bed where the spaghetti squash is doing really well. And then if I just go across here, let me see here. What are these? Sweet. So I put tags, sweet dumpling, and they seem to be doing fairly well. I can see the dumplings in there. So they are producing. There we go. And then it smells so wonderful over here. We have a ton of cilantro that has fallen over out of the box. Just smells so yummy. And then here we have some more spaghetti squash. So they're doing really good here. And down here we have some variegated peppermint. And so in the same box here, we have some carrots, and I didn't think that they were going to do too well, but look at all the greenery. They're doing beautiful. Now, unfortunately, you'll see that I have a lot of cilantro that's just kind of going everywhere. And I did not plant that this year. It just keeps coming back. This box here is box number 3, and we have giant beets. I'm actually going to go and grab a basket, and I'm going to harvest a whole bunch of these beets. We're having my dad's 70th birthday tomorrow, and I think it would be fabulous to have roasted beets from the garden for my dad, who is an avid gardener as well. And I'll just make sure that I plant something else in there so that when the new owners take possession in less than a month, they have something new growing there for them as well. And so look at this wall. So this here is the wall, the arch trellis of my tromboncino and rapacante squash. And you can see them in here. Like, they are just doing so good. Beside them, we have our sugar snap peas. Oh my God, I have to show you the beets again. Look at them in here. Oh my God. There are so many of them. We have found this year that the sugar snap peas that have gotten a little bit bigger, gotten away from us, this year they have actually been sweeter than the smaller ones. It's been really interesting. Oh my God, they're so good. If you've never grown sugar snap peas, please add them to your list. Look at all of the squash. For those of you that are new to tromboncino or rapacante squash, if you don't want to grow zucchini, then you could harvest these when they're little like this and use them just like a zucchini. You know that zucchini really doesn't have like a super dominant taste to it, and it will take on the taste of anything that you cook it with, and this is very similar to that. Now, as you let them get bigger, it becomes more of a winter squash, and it resembles more of like a butternut squash. So I will let these trellises fill up. I'll let them grow and become more of a winter squash, because my favorite thing to do with these types of squash is to make soup, and then I freeze them for the whole winter. And so here in the front, when we were selling the house, I really wanted to plant something in the front here add some pretty color to it. So I had found a couple of the onions that were left in this box here that I'm now growing fava beans in. And I actually pulled them out and I stuck them in this box to really just give a bit more color, dimension to it. And they are growing those pretty flowers again. So seed saving time. I can't get over the difference in the health of the Tromboncino and Rapaconte squash plants compared to everything else. And can we just take a moment to appreciate the size of these onions? So like I said, these are our fava beans. A friend of mine had suggested that I grow fava beans and said that they like to harvest them when they're young, and they pull the beans out and then they add them into their omelets and they just love them. Well, last year they got away from us because it happens overnight. All of a sudden you have beans, and then all of a sudden they are well past the young age of being able to pull them out and eat them. And so I kind of knew that something like that might happen again this year. And so what I decided to do was plant them in this box anyways. I had onions in here last year, and onions use a lot of nitrogen. And I thought, why not plant all of these fava beans, let them put nitrogen back into the soil. It'll make the soil good for next season. And all of these seeds, all of these beans can be seed saved for next year. Here we have San Marzano. So they're doing pretty good. The Dr. Witchy's yellow are coming along, but very, very slowly. Black strawberry, which is a new variety to me, seems to be coming along quite nicely. And again, you can see that it is a cherry variety, and I love cherries. This area here used to be my cucumber trellis. I even have the sign there that says cucumbers, and I did try to grow cucumbers over in that empty space over there this year, but they didn't survive. I seem to have a problem with growing cucumbers for the last couple years. Anyway, this mess here that you see, all of these raspberry plants that are here, you'll also see that there is some kind of vine growing there. And this is my kiwi plant that I planted in here, probably my first year that I was here. And I just want to show you. I wonder if you can see that. I'm not sure if it's going to. This is going to be the first year that I get kiwis on this plant. This is really cool. And so this area behind is quite the mess. Definitely needs some TLC, but TLC is in short supply right now. And so in front of the cucumber plants, we have our pepper plants, and they are in those pots. I find that they do really well when they are in an area where it's like super heated. And so you'll see over here, I also have peppers growing in there. So they're doing not too bad. I feel like they definitely would do better if they had more sun in this area. I know the ones that I have at my new property are bigger than these, and they are producing a lot more than these. This here was a couple extra plants I had. I'm not sure if they were the yard-long bean or the red Chinese noodle bean, but they are coming along pretty good. They like this trellis that I've put them on. You can see that they are starting to produce. They've got this going on right now. So I'm happy with that. Behind them, we do have some squash plants. The interesting thing about these plants is that you'll notice that they are vining, and they shouldn't be. So these plants should be acorn squash, and that is a bush variety. So it's quite interesting that all of the plants I planted here are now vining. At the end of the in-ground garden, in the back here, we have all of our asparagus ferns. And I got smart this year and decided not to plant anything on the other side. I tried for a couple years planting on the edge of our property line behind the asparagus, and the ferns were just so big that anything I planted there really were stunted. I did get stuff from them, but they really were stunted. And so that may be why some of these squash plants are just taking their time to grow. They've produced a couple zucchinis, but really they're taking their time. And you can see that the leaves are pretty healthy. So they maybe in the next week or two, they're really going to hit the road running and start producing a lot more. And then here is my very first Egyptian walking onion patch. My brother-in-law Keith gave me some 6 years ago when I moved to this property, and I didn't have a clue what they were. Planted them in this little patch of garden. So when I first came to this property, this garden wasn't here. And so this area here where the onions are, as well as where the asparagus is, right over to the end of where there it is, where the comfrey plant is, that was the only garden space that I added. Since then, I have doubled this garden, the in-ground garden, probably 30 times the amount that's there. And so back here, last year I used this trellis here for tomatoes. This year I only planted a couple there. Reason being is that the raspberry plants, and this is a really interesting story. So you'll see all the raspberry plants that are back there. So when I first moved here, I made this area the raspberry area, and I went to an auction. I bought raspberry plants. I planted them all out here, and none of them grew. And I thought, okay, I'll give them a year. And again, second year, none of them grew. Third year, I started pulling them out and ditching them and using it for another space. And all of a sudden, all of these new plants started growing to the point where I started taking them from here and planting them in the food forest around the pool fence, and just went crazy with propagating them all around the property. Before I let you go, I want to show you the size of the beets I just harvested. So the biggest yellow one, or golden beet, is this one. So it is like, that is crazy. However, let's talk about the red one. Like, how crazy is that? So these are going to be great for my dad's birthday party. I'm so excited. Everyone's gonna love having something straight from the garden, and they're going to be so yummy. Thanks for spending your time with me.